Imagine this. Tomorrow morning, every single person on Earth wakes up to the exact same notification. It doesn't matter where you live. New York, Tokyo, London, a tiny village in the middle of nowhere. Everyone gets the same message. It simply says, jump in exactly 10 seconds. At first, most people laugh. It has to be a prank, right? But then something strange happens. Nobody ignores it. Teachers stop teaching. Construction workers put down their tools. Football matches come to a complete stop. Even world leaders pause their meetings. The whole planet goes silent. 3, 2, 1. Everyone is standing perfectly still. For the first time in history, the entire human race is about to do exactly the same time. The countdown reaches 0, and suddenly, 8 billion people launch themselves into the air at exactly the same moment. For just a split second, every single human being is floating. No one is touching the ground, not a single foot, not a single shoe, not even a baby's tiny toes. It almost feels like the earth has become completely empty, just for a fraction of a second. Now think about that. 8 billion people, all pushing against the planet at exactly the same time. Could that tiny push actually move the earth? Believe it or not, the answer is yes, but not in the way you might expect. To figure out what would happen, we first need to answer one important question. How many people? Is 8 billion really? It's such a huge number that our brains can't really imagine it. If you tried counting one person every second without ever stopping, it would take you over 250 years just to count everyone alive today. That's longer than most countries have even existed. So when we say everyone, we're talking about an almost unbelievable number of people. Now imagine trying to fit all of them into one single place. Sounds impossible, right? Surprisingly, it isn't. If every person stood shoulder to shoulder, the entire human population would fit inside an area roughly the size of a large city. Picture it, one gigantic crowd, stretching as far as you can see, billions of people, waiting for the exact same moment to jump. What if everyone on Earth jumped at the exact same time? The countdown reaches 3, 2, 1, and everyone jumps. For a tiny fraction of a second, not a single person on Earth is touching the ground. It's the closest humanity has ever come to flying together. But here's something most people don't realize. The moment you jump, you're not just pushing yourself into the air. You're also pushing against the Earth. It sounds strange, but every time you jump, the Earth pushes you up, while you push the Earth down. That's one of the most famous laws in physics. It's called Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Simple. You push the ground pushes back. So if one person can push on the Earth, what happens? When 8 billion people do it, at exactly the same time, believe it or not, the answer is yes. The Earth really does move. But before you start imagining the planet flying through space, let's put things into perspective. The Earth is unbelievably heavy. An average person weighs about 70 kilograms. Multiply that by more than 8 billion people. And together, humanity weighs around 560 billion kilograms. That sounds absolutely massive. But now, meet the Earth. Our planet weighs about 6 sextillion kilograms. That's a 6, followed by 21 zeros. Compared to the Earth, all of humanity is surprisingly tiny. It's like placing a single grain of sand on top of a giant mountain and expecting the mountain to move. So yes, the Earth moves, but only by an unbelievably tiny amount. So tiny that you could never feel it. So, how far does the Earth actually move? Take a guess. 1 meter, 1 centimeter, maybe even 1 millimeter? Nope. Not even close. The Earth moves by less than the width of a single atom. An atom is so incredibly small that millions of them could fit across the width of a human hair. That's how tiny this movement really is. Imagine trying to notice that. It would be like trying to see a single grain of dust move across an entire football field. without binoculars. So technically, yes, every person on Earth jumping together would move the planet. But in reality, the Earth wouldn't even notice. But wait, there's one part we haven't talked about yet. Jumping is easy. Landing is the real problem. Imagine 8 billion people all crashing back down at exactly the same second. That sounds like it should create the biggest earthquake in human history, right? After all, even a stadium with 50,000 people jumping together can make the ground shake. So if 50,000 people can do that, what happens when you multiply that number by more than 160,000? Would cities collapse? Would mountains shake? Would the entire planet start vibrating? Surprisingly, the answer is no, not even close. Even if every single person landed at the exact same moment, the Earth still wouldn't experience a real earthquake. That's because earthquakes don't happen on the surface. They happen deep underground, when enormous tectonic plates suddenly shift. When we jump, we're only shaking a tiny layer at the very top of the planet. It's like tapping the skin of a giant watermelon. The inside barely notices. The tiny vibrations from billions of footsteps would spread out in every direction, getting weaker and weaker until they completely disappear. So instead of creating the biggest earthquake in history, humanity would create one very, very tiny bump. But here's the funny part. The Earth wouldn't notice. Humans definitely would. Imagine standing in a crowd with 8 billion people, and everyone lands at exactly the same moment. People would bump into each other. Some would lose their balance. Millions of phones would fly into the air. And someone would definitely lose a shoe. Parents would be trying to find their kids. Friends would get separated. And somewhere, one guy would still ask, "What just happened?" Roads would be filled with confused people. Parks would turn into giant crowds. And social media would explode. Not because the Earth moved, but because humanity had just pulled off the biggest synchronized jump in history. So, what did we learn? If every single person on Earth jumped at exactly the same time, the planet really would move, but only by less than the width of a single atom. So small that no human could ever notice it. There would be no giant earthquake, no change in Earth's orbit, no massive disaster, just billions of confused people wondering where their shoes went. And maybe that's the most surprising part of all. Even with more than 8 billion people, humanity is still incredibly small compared to the planet we call home. It's funny when you think about it. As humans, we often feel incredibly powerful. We build skyscrapers. We launch rockets into space. We even walked on the moon. But when it comes to moving an entire planet, even all 8 billion of us working together barely make a difference. That's what makes Earth so incredible. It's over 12,700 kilometers wide, weighs almost 6 sextillion kilograms, and has been spinning through space for over 4.5 billion years. Compared to something that massive, we're tiny, not because we're unimportant, but because our planet is simply that enormous. And somehow, I think that makes Earth even more amazing. So, the next time someone asks you, what if everyone on Earth jumped at the exact same time? You can tell them, yes, the Earth really would move, just less than the width of a single atom. Sometimes, the craziest questions lead to the most surprising answers. But here's another question. What if, one day, the Earth suddenly stopped spinning? Would we survive? What would happen to the oceans? Would the atmosphere keep moving? Or would everything change in just a few seconds? We'll find out in the next episode. See you then.